Okay, today we're reacting to Thomas the Tank and Shed 17. Okay. Obvious loading. What? Alright. I love how it goes into widescreen. Oh, the tracks are broken. Oh, wait, that's an American train. Okay.
They were the stories that have charmed an entire generation. From the books to the television series, people around the world have grown up with the railway stories, and all their cheerful characters. But the truth behind Thomas and his friends was no children's fantasy. The truth would be horrifying.
Shed 17.
It is 1945, and the remote island of Sodor, off the northwest coast of England, has emerged from the fog of World War II, relatively unscathed and untouched.
The island served as a detention camp for Germans living in England. That's how Professor came to be here.
Professor Wilhelm Goethe was born in 1903
I can tell
in
this
Munich,
part is going to
Germany.
be boring, so I'm just going to skip.
Celebrity.
Controversy on Sodor Island. Questions asked about science ethics.
It's fair to say I was pretty nervous at
I'm
times,
joined now by Keith Hartley.
but I think I put on a brave face.
What did you think when you first came to meet Thomas the Tank Engine?
Poor Keith.
Most of my mates said I looked pretty good on telly. The mayor said I'd represented the people of Sodor very well.
The Sodor experiment.
It's important to show you're confident when people
Kindness
are asking
or
you
cruelty?
awkward questions.
Good evening. An act of mercy or a crime against humanity? I am joined now by Keith
Even when some of the questions got difficult, I made sure I knew what I was talking about.
What was your reaction when you first met a talking tank engine?
If you can't make an informed opinion, or if you can't string together two words on telly, well, maybe you shouldn't be on there.
There are two sides to this.
Admittedly, the subject matter was a bit bizarre sometimes.
There are some dark forces at work here.
Hey, that was an actual
You're
recording. I
alright
think
as long as you could win over the audience.
See this, they're laughing at you. They're not laughing with you.
The Goethe family refused to answer any questions. Behind closed doors, the only question they agreed to answer had been asked repeatedly. Would Thomas work on the railway? The response was an emphatic no.
Aww.
Thomas's DNA had been reprogrammed to accept and adapt to the engine structure, using the engine's internal system to maintain his organic functions. What no one could be sure of was how much of the
It's from the
engine
website,
was
isn't it?
mechanical and how much was organic material.
Thomas had been able to move around without coaches, But to work on the railway, his engine would need to be fired up and operated by a driver and fireman.
Since no one could be sure how much of the engine was Thomas, the pressure caused by the engine could rupture his organs from the inside, and the incredible heat could boil him alive. Professor Hans and his father vowed Thomas would never work on the railways.
Similarly, the two professors were to refuse many requests by people from around the world who wished to be biofused into engines.
There were billionaires offering to pay whatever they wanted to be converted into an engine or some other transport. Train enthusiasts too. People with terminal illnesses were desperate to be made into trains.
He narrated for the first.
But for some reason, the Kurtzes refused.
But there would be other interested parties, eager to seize on the biofusion goldmine. The independently wealthy Topham Hatt staged a hostile takeover, and within weeks had bought a controlling share in Sodor Research.
Immediately, the policy of the company changed, and so did the ethics. The medical supply wing was shut down, and work began on mass biofusion experiments and operations. Anyone who could afford it, some handing over their whole fortunes, were turned into engines.
But,
why?
along with the new policy,
You can't go
there
anywhere
would be worse to
or
come.
do anything.
Biofused engines
I mean,
would be
you
allowed,
get to go places,
then
but that's it.
obliged to work on the railways.
The first one we fired up was James. He didn't have the money some of these people had, and so agreed to basically sign his life away if they wanted to experiment further, or to take massive risks like this. As usual, the fat had everything recorded. All kept classified, you understand.
These recordings, shown for the first time, reveal the extent of Sir Topham Hatt's experiments.
It was horrible watching these engines work on the railways some
Was it?
days. But the tourists wanted to see it. They expected it. And for me, it was work.
But, with the new engine's increasing work schedule, came more and more accidents.
Edward was first to have problems. He'd been filming all day for the new TV series they'd announced, and for his last scene, he had to pull into Wellsworth Station and whistle to the kids on the platform.
Peep, peep, whistled Edward. Thank you very much.
Sadly, this was only the first in an increasing number of incidents.
Harold had an obsession with aircraft and had paid to become a helicopter. The operation had gone well, but we had to ban him from being allowed to attempt flight.
In an experiment kept secret until now, Mavis the diesel engine was to be the first biofused locomotive used on the railway.
We fueled her up and everything seemed fine. Then things got out of hand.
The diesel began to burn her internal organs. Everything organic in the engine was soon burning.
Have you ever heard a locomotive scream in pain?
No.
We tried rinsing out the fuel tank with water, but by then it was too late.
Mavis's body would be kept under lock and key indefinitely. In an unexpected U-turn, Sir Topham Hatt would ban fueled engines from being used on the island.
What about Diesel?
Harold was never told
He's in
why
the new
he couldn't
trailer.
fly, but the decision would keep him alive, if only for a little while longer.
In fact, unknown to the outside world,
Why has he got
there have
tracks
been
in his
many
office?
failed biofusion experiments.
That fat bastard kept the accidents a secret, and legal disclaimers had to be signed by anyone being biofused, so there'd be no legal action taken if anything went wrong.
This footage shows engines being displayed to tourists during the off-season. Many of these engines were failed biofusion experiments and were too ill to work or were already dead.
They had to put a stop to that, though.
With all accidents happening, everyone started asking the same thing. Why had Thomas, the first engine, worked so well?
Despite all the troubles the other engines had, Thomas had worked fine, seemingly oblivious to the other engines' problems and accidents.
Keeping their problems a secret from the outside world, Sodor Research began selling the technology to other countries in multi-million-pound deals. These countries would have less qualms about the use of fuel engines and even the modern electric trains. Even failed biofused engines were being displayed publicly in what would become a kind of freak show.
That's a
To his
nice
horror,
use of that character.
Professor Hans Goetze saw what this was leading to, slavery of engines, and immediately resigned. His father, Wilhelm, would go one step further.
Nice radio thing. I don't know. Oh my god. Oh yeah, because he's made out of
Professor
wood.
Wilhelm couldn't come to terms with what was happening to his engines, and took the only course he thought he could take.
That fat got a load of us rail staff over to his
That's me.
house to clean up after the body was taken away. You should have seen it. Sawdust everywhere. It took us days.
But such attempts to keep the incidents on Sodor a secret were short-lived, after a very public accident.
Gordon paid an enormous amount to be Sawdor's first 462 configuration engine. Much bigger than any other engine at the time. We were terrified that fat shite would make us fire up that huge engine.
We were shocked to discover he had insisted on being able to work on the railway. So, one night, after the regular staff had finished for the day, Fat some of the rail staff and I fired up the engine.
As usual, these experiments were filmed. This footage has never...
Okay. My thoughts so far. This is a good movie. So far. This is a really, really good movie. And, well, I'm going to release part 2 tomorrow. So, yeah, that's it. Bye.